I've drawn on paper. I've drawn on a mug. What else can I draw on? Wood? Well, hello there, I'm Doodle. I would like to preface this by asking you if you would like to subscribe. Get it? Would? Yeah, sorry, it's early in the morning when I record this. You could call this a morning wood drawing. Alright, I'll stop. So you get the gist of it. I'm drawing, but not on paper. This is a wooden paddle or something. To be honest, I'm not sure what it is or what it's for. I'm 99% sure it came from a kit of wood items for pyro engraving. You know, it's when you basically use a sort of soldering iron to engrave on wood. The head locally burns the wood and makes it dark. You can press longer or harder to make it darker, and with that you can draw on it. So yeah, I do know where this piece of wood comes from. I'm just not certain what it's supposed to be used for. Maybe taking a mini pizza out of a mini oven? I'm usually using it as a mug coaster to avoid the heat being directly on my giant mousepad. And surprisingly, it turns out to be quite a grainy surface to draw on. It's a bit strange at first, but after only a few seconds I started to enjoy it. I'm using a Pilot fineliner to make this nice abstract pattern on it. I like the Pilot pen because it's thin, the ink is a good black, and mostly because it's cheap and I have a lot of these pens. I didn't know if drawing on a surface like wood could ruin the tip, which is why I didn't use my rotring isograph, my Kaweco Sport, or my cross fountain pen. This pattern... Now, let's talk about it for a bit, alright? It's a pattern that I like a lot. It is not the best looking when you look at it, but I love it for two reasons. First off, of course I like a uniform looking pattern. When you see it from a distance, you see that it's intricate, and yet the overall density is constant. To me it looks really pleasing, unless maybe if you zoom in too much and you see that it's an uncoordinated mess. There are circles, line crossing, hard angles everywhere. I've been making abstract patterns for a few years now, and that brings me to the second reason I love this pattern. It's a variant of the pattern that my hand draws by default whenever I stop thinking. This whole abstract drawing style consists of hand twitches and finger motions that I barely have to control. It makes drawing like this completely effortless and relaxing. It took me a while to realize this, that this was my easiest pattern to make. I literally don't have to think at all to make this. The only time I did need to think doing this was when I wanted to not draw it. I'm talking about the negative space, the clear parts that I wanted to leave as they were. As I said, this pattern looks uniform from afar, and so there is a play on negative space that needs to happen to make it more interesting. I'm spoiling the end of today's drawing, but after I covered the wood, I decided to remove the negative space and fill the blanks with the pattern as well. All in all, maybe I shouldn't tell you that because it makes me sound lazy, but I didn't have to expend much effort making this video. Not only was it very easy to draw, it was also relatively fast. It took less than 40 minutes for this to be over. I mean, this pattern is literally default hand motions, so it isn't slow. You don't need to spend a lot of effort for a piece of art to be enjoyed though. I mean, I can't say for you, but for me the process is also part of the enjoyment. I like to watch people draw, and I hope you're the same. Drawing it myself is also something I enjoy, of course. I spend these 40 minutes listening to an audiobook. Recently I've been getting back into the Harry Potter franchise. I read the book twice when I was a kid, I think, and overall I really enjoyed the universe. If you wanted to know, I'm either a Ravenclaw or a Slytherin, depending on when I take the test on Pottermore. Anyway, the Harry Potter series is a really good grounding point for me for many reasons. I remember back when I was in high school, I used the first Harry Potter book to seriously get into the English language. I wanted to learn English, and school English just wasn't enough. Especially for learning a new language, you need to practice, and it's not with just 2 hours a week learning irregular verbs that you can do it. So I turned to the first Harry Potter book and started reading it in English. It is a really good tool because these books can be enjoyed even if you already know the story. I wouldn't read twice any and all books. Sometimes knowing the story takes the pleasure out, but not with Harry Potter. And by reading it in English, I wasn't gonna be lost. I knew the story enough to be able to piece it together and understand its English from context, despite my modest skills at the time. All of that to say that now, I don't really need English practice, but I did start listening to the Harry Potter series in Spanish. I know Spanish, and I dare say that at some point I was fluent in it. However, as it was about 7 years ago and I rarely get the opportunity to practice it nowadays, my skills in Spanish got a bit rusty. And so I turned to Harry Potter to get the train moving again. You know the train is really moving when you start thinking of words in other languages when you do whatever else. That is what made me fall in love with learning languages, and what I've been missing recently due to my lack of Spanish practice. There was a point in my life when I lived in a Spanish-speaking country and a lot of my friends were English-speaking. As a French guy who was actively learning the two, I knew I had it the moment I could seamlessly switch from thinking in French to thinking in Spanish and then to English. I could hold a conversation in English with a friend, then switch to Spanish to, let's say, buy food, and then instantly back to English. I miss that, and so I'm getting my Spanish level back to where it was. I know it's working because last night I was alone and just thinking, and some words were coming to me faster in Spanish than English. I do think in English most of the time though. I also think in French, but not all the time. I think it's because I'm making videos in English, writing a book in English, and mainly consuming English media. Anyway, I got a bit deeper into this rabbit hole of languages than I first thought I would. The only thing I wanted to say was that while drawing on this piece of wood, I was listening to Harry Potter 2 in Spanish. Now that I've drawn on a ceramics mug and a wooden paddle, what else can I draw on in the future? I'm thinking fabric. Maybe you have a better idea? Tell me in the comments after you like this video. I already drew on fabric once. You can see it on my Instagram at d3_sd. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more art twice a week. I'm D3. Nos veremos pronto. Bye!